Hey guys, I'm Patrick Hall. I'm a professional photographer here in Charleston, South Carolina. And for the last few months, I've had this crazy idea to do a taser photo shoot where I was going to take portraits of people the second that they got hit with a taser and then film it in super slow motion. This is the taser that I used, and this thing, it hurts. Woo! As a portrait photographer, a lot of times I get people in front of my camera and they give me all kinds of weird expressions because they're aware that the camera's in front of them. And I think as a good portrait photographer, you're always trying to get something real. You're trying to get something that really conveys the expression the person has deep down inside. And what's interesting about this photo shoot is there's no way you can fake your emotions and your expression when you get hit with 300,000 volts of electricity. And I wanted everyone to kind of have this nude look. I didn't want clothing to be a distraction. I wanted you to be able to see these images in 20 years and not be distracted by what people were wearing. So we had all the guys take off their shirts. We had all of the girls either bring their tops down on their shoulders, or I brought tube tops so that they could actually wear something different so that we could get that nice clean shoulder line. And it started off just as a photo series. I'm gonna take a bunch of pictures and get these really cool images. But then we thought, why don't we film this whole thing in super slow motion? It could be really interesting seeing the change of reaction from nervousness and anticipation to, you know, pain or joy or frustration or whatever would come out of the taser shot. So basically it's two concepts, a photo shoot paired up with this super slow motion video, and then we wound up also filming the person doing the tasing. We did a bunch of tests in the studio. You can see some of those videos here. And what we found was the reactions from these people were completely different. Some of the guys looked like they were in pain. A lot of the girls looked like they were having a pleasurable experience. And it was just really interesting for me to take these pictures at that key moment when they're getting stunned and see exactly the facial expressions that people made. So as you can imagine, one of the most difficult things about pulling this photo series off was finding a venue that would allow me to taser 100 people in their venue. So many of them said, "You're gonna do what? I can't have a taser in my bar. I can't serve alcohol, I can't tase people, that's just way too risky." Finally, I found Dusko. They were really cool. They talked to my attorneys and we had a whole legal liability form drafted up just for this event. And I know for me, my biggest fear was, are people going to allow themselves to get tased once they see the pain of someone else's face at this party that we're gonna throw? And so I wound up buying a bunch of tasers off Amazon, and they were the perfect strength. When you got hit with this taser, it was enough to make you scream, jump up out of your chair, give some great expression and emotion, but it wasn't painful enough to, one, give you any kind of permanent damage or scar, and two, it wasn't painful enough that you didn't want to do it again. I was shocked by how many people wanted to get back in the chair and get tased a second or a third time just because it was so fun and entertaining. So let's talk about the cameras that we used to film this project. For the slow motion, we used two Sony FS700s, and these cameras are great because we could mount our Nikon lenses directly to them, and we could shoot 240 frames per second. This allows you to see all the minute details of the moment that someone gets tased, and it's really interesting to see the reactions in super slow motion. Now, initially my plan was to just have one of these shooting straight on with the camera that I was taking photos with, and that would just be it. But we realized that the reactions on the people's faces that were doing the tasing were very interesting, if not more interesting than the person getting tased. And in our extended video of the taser photo shoot, you can see both the taser and the tasee, which gives it a completely different feeling. So let's talk a little bit about how I crafted the still images. Basically, I used a Nikon D810, brand new Nikon camera, and my first thought was I needed to shoot really fast because it's gonna be very hard to capture the reactions. But what I found was that in order to light everybody in a way that looked really dramatic, my lights really couldn't keep up with 10 frames a second. So we wound up going for more resolution. This thing shoots 36 megapixels, And it was really challenging to get that perfect peak moment because there's so much reaction that happens in a split second that, you know, there were times where I'd miss the shot and I'd have to persuade people to do it again. A lot of the shots are the very first time, and people said I'm definitely not doing that again. So timing was extremely important with this photo shoot. When I first came up with this photo series, I knew I wanted the images to have a very stylized look. So I was going to have to light everybody with a few different flash heads to really make them pop against a gray background. What I used for this series was the ProPhoto D1 1000 watt mono heads. And basically what these things do is they allow me to put lights around my subject and kind of carve them out. And in total, I used 3 different lights. The first light that we have here is the key light. And I knew I wanted to create some shadows kind of down on people, so I wound up using a 2.7 by 2.7 square softbox. To give it a little more contrast, I actually removed the front diffusion panel, and it allowed it to just have a little harder edge, which I think worked really great. Behind me, I wound up putting a 2 by 3 foot softbox as kind of a shoulder light. I wanted to make sure that we had a nice rim light on their shoulders, and it also just helped separate them from the background. And then to give it one final extra bit of kick, I added a bare bulb light right behind me, just firing straight at them with a reflector dish. So 3 lights, 2 of them on the back, giving the edged out look, and then just one softbox in the front just to kind of give a little bit of modeling on the face. So before this whole shoot, I did this big setup. I got everything here in our studio, and we had to pack everything up and take it to the venue. So I ran a bunch of tests, but one thing I realized that I hadn't accounted for when we got to the actual photo shoot was flash duration. So if you were taking normal portraits, you probably wouldn't really care about flash duration because everybody's sitting pretty still. But the second that you send 300,000 volts into their body, they actually move really quickly, and you want to be able to freeze that motion and get a really crisp shot. So with the ProPhoto D1 packs, the 1000 heads, you have to put them at full power to get the shortest flash duration, and that's going to give you the sharpest shots. At first I was shooting at really low power and I was getting a slight blur, but then I was just able to turn everything up to get a nice crisp image. One thing I also had to prepare for was I really wanted everybody to be in a confined area so that everyone at the venue could watch, but we didn't have chaos. So I wound up using these 2 Lastolite highlights. They're these huge softboxes that are used for backgrounds, and we popped 2 of them up, one in the background and then one on the side, to kind of create a little space that we could put our subjects in. These Lastolite highlights, they worked great, and they allowed us to not only have the white background behind our subject, but a white background behind the person doing the tasing. So all in all, this little idea that I had months ago became this huge photo shoot. Over 100 people showed up. I would say 99% of everybody that came through the door signed a waiver, got tased. It was a big success. People loved it, and now I'm trying to figure out what I actually want to do with these images. So you can head over to fstoppers.com/taser photoshoot, where you can see all of the still images as well as both slow motion videos that we produced for this event.
Where are we doing this one?
1, 2, 3, recording.
No? All right, go, go!
He kept inching away.
He did this too much in the studio.